welcome everybody to this week's webinar called Wearable Technology. It's about mood visualization changes in mental health perspectives. And I'm co-hosted with Christina Colman-McHugh from Moodbeam. And what I'd like to do is just really take you through a 40-minute experience with us. We're going to try and share with you 20 minutes of insights and have some time for questions actually at the end. As you may be aware, this is a webinar series that actually brings together health tech thought leaders to discuss the kind of key issues with mental health and how technology can help. The agenda, we're going to really this week focus on the post-lockdown spike in mental health. We've seen a lot of that in the news recently about the expectations, and clearly what we'd like to do is provide some insights and how we believe that wearable technology is rising to that challenge. So I think in the first instance, it'd be really great for us to introduce ourselves as hosts. My name is Marina Nicholas. I'm the CEO at Miindset, and in the last decade, I've enjoyed a career in the tech sector, working with companies doing business for good. I'm very passionate about helping corporates look at mental health differently and actually break down the associated stigma. And I very much believe in harnessing the power of technology to help humanity. So I'd like to hand over now to Christina.
Hi everyone, I'm co-founder of a company called Moodbeam. I spent about 20 years writing about new technologies and business and innovation, and never thought I'd find myself immersed in it, but I have been for the past 4 years. I'm delighted to be on the platform today. I really believe in everything that sort of Marina and Miindset are trying to achieve, and there's real synergy between the two brands, so I look forward to sharing that with you.
Excellent, thank you. So really wanted to just kind of kick up and talk about the problem that we're experiencing at the moment. Like we said, the spike in mental health waiting times that we're predicting happening. Even today on the news, we're talking about potential cancer patients that have actually had to be put on hold. But also we're not yet familiar with what the long tail effects are of the mental health and the waiting times. The UN actually predicts that due to the isolation, the loss of physical support networks, and the anxiety around life outside lockdown is going to lead to a spike. And in addition, Mind has recently concluded that 25% of those seeking mental health failed to get any support that they actually needed during this period. There was lots of cancelled appointments, and many struggled to speak to a doctor. So we're going to look at potentially a situation over the next couple of months or even years that has been unfamiliar to us. So what will it actually look like post-lockdown? So we believe very much as a company of technologists that technology is playing its part in this new normal. In the last webinar, we looked at how artificial intelligence is actually playing its part in helping employers provide instant wellness to their employees. But in this particular one, we're turning our hand to wearable technology and how it's providing a solution because it's accessible, usable, and everyday support. As we said, we have all different demographics, from the elderly to the working population. Even the small children are now returning to school, and health professionals themselves have experienced tremendous stress and anxiety being on the front line. So we're looking at how can we actually harness the power of technology.
Yeah. I think just sort of step in here, we'll sort of take you through, the 4 main areas, if you like, really. I'm beginning with, as Marina says, health and social care. We know that, and we know of somebody, certainly, who has been sort of struggling, if you like, with sort of getting to grips with what life in COVID looks like, but certainly those under pressure are the ones who have been frontline. And I think really, pre-coronavirus, if you like, they were already struggling to really try and address what mental health support looks like once you walk into the surgery. You know, they're human beings themselves. They're under a certain amount of pressure. You know, generally appointments are usually 4 minutes, but a lot of the time when somebody has actually had the courage to get to a surgery, it's not actually their sore knee that they want to talk about. It's their anxiety or their inability to cope at times. And so obviously you have a system that's under pressure. We all know how under-resourced it can be and stretched out the waiting times. You know, it can be weeks in some areas, it can be months in others. But really, what do we do within this area of who's caring about the people, caring about the people? And, you know, with the conversations that we're having, it's that whole ability to sort of try and take the pressure of people who do know what they're talking about and know potentially where, you know, the diagnosis and the treatment pathway should lead. But it should really begin with self-care. And I think this is where we're bridging the gap, if you like, with health technology, is that whole sort of self-triaging your own mental health and what that looks like in between surgery times, right through to sort of secondary healthcare and chronic conditions, living with conditions. And it is really just all about trying to approach it from a person-led point of view. So obviously you have the patient, but you also have the service provider and what that looks like in between, and really trying to see how somebody is when they're not with you still applies very much in this area of expertise. Next slide, thank you. So obviously this is one that we've, you know, all very familiar with. We either still are a child, or we have children, or we certainly have memories of what that looks like and what it looks like in classrooms. And in the Western world, we've always been sat in rows being taught and being told by parents that we're very safe and there's nothing to worry about. But obviously, as you can see yourselves from any news stories you read, 24 hours can change everything. 1 minute we're all getting our kids ready to go back to school or certain class groups. Then we're told that it's going to be only 25% of a school, so who decides who goes back? Then we have key workers, children going back, but how do the children feel about all of this? And there's some pretty hefty stats, you know, coming out of NHS England. You know, the clinical director says, you know, it's been able to pinpoint those stress points. And it's always been the greatest sort of problem for teachers who purely want to teach and educate. And equally, you know, with ELSA support, emotional literacy support, there's people doing fantastic things, but how do we broach the whole getting back to whatever normal looks like? And as is, you know, whether you're 7 or 17 or you're, you know, at any stage of your life, it's having that reassurance and capabilities in place to say, look, don't worry. We know how you feel, we feel it too, and let's do this together. And again, you know, I can touch on this later, but it's how we're addressing that with sort of wearable tech or tech that's with you, keeping a connection, flagging up those moments that initially would be non-verbally logged, so that, you know, when something happens or you have that pang of anxiety or worry, how do you log it? How do you approach that? How do you, you know, capture that moment, and more importantly, how do you get a conversation started around it? Next slide, thanks Marina. So big one obviously is return to work, and you know, these are some pretty, you know, heavy statistics really. The very fact that, you know, I think one other survey that I read this week said that the number of people in employment, you know, discussing the whole idea of returning to work, the anxiety had doubled between March and April. The number of people who were anxious about actually returning to work doubled. That's frightening. And obviously we're dealing with intelligent, articulate people here at all levels and agendas of the, you know, the employment system. But, you know, how do we support the employees? How do we make it a positive experience? And how do we support the employers? Because obviously everybody has enjoyed this element. We're now got our social bubbles, if you like. We're going to soon have, you know, employment bubbles. What does that look like? You know, who's going to return? Can we really fit perspex visors everywhere? What does that look like? But it's the emotional connection that teams who have historically been together, whether it's 1 day a week or every day a week, all of a sudden they're working from home, particularly with cultures and industries where they're branch based. How on earth do you really try and stay connected with employees from afar and know that they're okay? And if they're not okay, how do they feel empowered enough to share that they don't feel great about this? So it's a big concern. Workplace well-being has only really found its feet. We've talked about it plenty for the past sort of 5 years, 10 years, but it's really what you do in practice that's key, I think. And I think, yeah, where it all began, and we'll touch on it, but obviously, you know, the origins of Moodbeam lay firm and steadfast in how do you keep a connection with somebody from afar. And obviously at the minute, we're all sort of, you know, British grit, you know, we're all pushing ahead, we're trying to get used to what the new normal looks like. But, you know, the evidence is there already, the signs are there already, that whether you are somebody who, you know, is in a position of authority, or you're somebody just within the family environment whose children are looking to you for direction, or you're somebody who is working with children and family care and frontline workers, you know, we're all in this together. We're all trying to decide on our feet what it looks like. But you know, the signs of PTSD already, for example, with people who have been working frontline in society and making decisions, that's actually having an impact on their own mental health. So how can they lead in confidence when they're already questioning their own abilities at times? So it's really, you know, the evidence is there. The evidence was there beforehand. There are certainly people far more well-versed than me to discuss what that looks like in a historical context. But for now, it's what can we do to bridge the gap in our personal lives and also our working lives, and what does that look like for everyone? So obviously the main things that wearable tech we're experiencing ourselves, but wearable tech can sort of help people with. If people are struggling to really you know, articulate how they're feeling, the hardest thing really is to open up, isn't it, and say, actually, not too sure if I'm coping very well with this, or actually I think I really am, and I want to log this, because if I'm doing okay and I'm feeling happy and I'm having a good day, let's do more of what makes us feel good. But in the realms of care and treatment pathways, getting an appointment is, you know, going to be even more difficult in the days and weeks to come. We've already had a highly pressurized sort of environment really in trying to make sure that people get seen within a certain time frame. But if they are even trying to broach that point and actually have the courage to speak up, we've got to begin in our own lives to do that before we can possibly expect employees to do it, possibly expect other sort of industries to do it. And it's adjusting to this new norm. This isn't going to go away. This is going to be here for 6, 12, 18 months, 24 months, but it's what you learn from it. It's the learnings. And I think by being able to capture for yourself through a connected technology, that's where the learnings start to happen. That's where, because of the simplicity of what we're offering and the data that its use churns out the other end, that's where the you know, the AI kicks in. You know, machine learning, telling you something that you didn't know about yourself, whether as a person or as an organization, is massive. And it's having that connection and being able to see what that looks like from afar at a glance. Question this, you know, is, you know, in terms of an organization, is marketing okay? They seem okay. What about sales? I'm not sure. There's, you know, somebody struggling amongst that anonymized data. Well, how do we reach out, and how do we connect? And pure and simply, it's the mindfulness aspect of it, is that we've talked about mindfulness for years and years. Some people have really embraced it because it's really helped them through a hump. Other people see it historically as a bit hippie and soft, but actually it's probably the most crucial backbone that you can have sort of in society right now, is to be able to stop in a moment and acknowledge how you feel and how something impacts you, whether that's internally or externally, and the whole empowerment that gives you. we all question ourselves because we're always trying to do better and learn more. But if you can reflect and look back and say, well, actually, I was doing that on Tuesday, that didn't make me feel so good. Let's not do what I did on Tuesday so much. And it's that whole sort of acknowledgement, I think, that wearable technology can bring you, because it's with you all the time. It's with you when you're driving, showering, walking, talking, in a meeting. And it's that whole, it's almost like somebody that we know very well talks about it almost as an amulet, something that's with you all the time, that body on your shoulder really sort of pushing you on and saying, you know, let's speak up about this. And it's a very, very powerful mechanism. Next. Yeah. So shall I explain a bit about this, Marina, or do you?
That would be great. Yes,
yeah.
Please.
Okay, so to give context to why I'm here today, I have sort of co-founded a company called Moodbeam. Now, it is the first wearable, if you like, that actually addresses the mood logging technology, the ability to really sort of monitor, self-triage, we talk about. Those highs and lows of your day, so that you can, you know, have a conversation based on it or share insight. And now, obviously, with Moodbeam, it is a wearable. It is literally binary biometrics. The only biometrics here are actually the tracking technology for sleep and steps. The mood technology is purely self-reporting. It's a digital mood diary, if you like. It's logging in a moment how you feel. So literally this. You press the yellow when you're having a good moment, you press the blue when you're having a not so good moment, and that gets logged and timestamped in the device until it's in close proximity to a paired companion app where you're able to set prompts that vibrates and nudges you through your day, supports you, but also the ability to add journal notes allows you to build up a historical, if you like, mood journal that's with you all of the time and can be kept with you or shared in sort of the personal environment or organizational. And it's really this combination that, and I'll touch on it soon with Marina, that was born out of a personal need, really, to be able to log, connect and share, that can make those changes in your life. And that's Moodbeam. It is that lethal combination, powerful combination of mood plus sleep plus steps, because we all know that one impacts upon the other.
No, that's great. Thank you, Christina. And I think from our perspective, what we have at Miindset is we have an ecosystem of technology companies, and it's a pleasure to have Moodbeam doing the kind of mood and tracking that we can be a companion to with Miindset when we're doing our changing minds and using the AI. So the powerful combination of wearable technology and the AI is obviously a perfect collaboration. So we're delighted to talk to people about that if they want more information after this. But I think it'll be really great. That was great to give us some insights of what's happening and your perspectives on that. But I think it'd be really great now if we can actually, if anybody actually has any questions, because it's, you know, it could be about how it works or the impact that it has. So I think I'll go ahead and ask you the first question, because you did allude to it. It'd be really great. It's a fabulous idea that you have obviously created in a company that you've built. So what inspired you to actually create and launch Moodbeam?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it really began 4 years ago. My background, I was a working journalist with my own PR company at the time, and my eldest daughter came home one day from school and was very, very upset and said, "Mummy, I'm not having a great time at school." Now, I did not spot the signs. I thought we were that family that spoke about everything. I thought that she would share that with me sooner, but the fact was that she had been trying for a couple of weeks on her own to deal with a bullying situation, a situation that was causing her anxiety. And it blew my mind to think that my 7-year-old was actually trying to cope all by herself at one point, but then the whole ability to share how she felt was on her shoulders at that stage. So we did all the usual things. We got her the support. We as a family regrouped, and she cracked on, but it was myself who was left on high alert after that moment. I was wondering if she was okay. They asking her 10 times after I'd picked her up was just sort of like, ugh, mom. So it left me thinking how great it would be to know how she was when she wasn't with me, so that we could strike up a conversation, whether it was when walking the dog or at bedtime, really just to see if her day had been a good day or a bad day. So that was the premise behind Moodbeam. I, as I say, wasn't a techie. I'm not sure if I am now, but I'm in that realm. But I started speaking to people, and I spoke to a good friend in the same village, and she says, why don't you have a chat with Jonathan? And Jonathan, it turned out, was a very experienced sort of entrepreneur. I didn't know the full extent of this, or else I may well have not had the nerve to approach him. But I was actually on an ignition program that's run by FEO, a local sort of Hull-based free mentoring service. And she says, have a chat. So I spoke to Jonathan. I said, look, I have this need. I can't find anything out there. I've tried self-help groups. I've tried apps that are coming out. I've tried all of these different mechanisms, but there's nothing that would empower at that stage a small child to acknowledge how she felt and communicate that to me. So he sat and he listened, and he pointed me in the direction of C40I, a tech incubator. And I went off and spoke to some very clever people there, came back and said, look, you know, I really think we should do this. And he says, me too. And we co-founded Moodbeam, based on the a need to solve a problem and explore it. He says it's not going to be easy. I had all of these, you know, ignorance is bliss, but fanciful notions of what if we created this, you know, swatch mentality, each color meaning a mood, and you pressed it, and then there was an app that did that. And he says, you know, it's not going to be easy, but we've got to go for it. So that was really the premise behind Moodbeam. We spent 18 months exploring through an MVP prototype to test the concept. Would somebody press a button to denote how they felt? And more importantly, would it be of any use whatsoever? So we could never have gauged really the insight and anecdotal evidence that would lead us to funding at that point. And we actually received Northern Powerhouse funding that allowed us to put it into production. And the third quarter of last year, we had 5,000 wearables arrive on UK shores. And we'd actually pre-sold sort of a fifth of those already before people even had it on their wrists. So we knew that we knew we were on exploration, if you like, but it needed the people. It needed people to really embrace what it was about, which is that whole sort of self-acknowledgement that if you have a problem, you could maybe do something about it by seeing what it looks like. I think I've got there.
No, that's great. So that would be great. I guess I've seen you've had awards and you have approval. So it'd be great for you to kind of share with us who is currently using it. That'd be good to get those insights.
Absolutely. So we talk about, because the product is so simple, if you like, and the technology is so simple, and we've worked really hard to make it that simple, it's accessible and potentially useful to many. So we talk about our pillars. So we have the personal use care, which where it began, but still is valid today, with people trying to keep a connection with somebody that they care about or for, but can't always be with them. But we also have within workplace well-being, which I've touched on, is a massive area where there are people doing fantastic things, but it's really that whole sort of how do you equip a workforce with the ability to speak up and have a voice. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a well-being tool. It can be, a project management tool, and sometimes the two worlds collide. And it's really been able to sort of, work with forward-thinking HR companies. We have sort of engineering firms. We have, other institutions that really are large institutions, but are wondering at the minute, how do we keep connected with them? And, within construction is another massive one, where we know that obviously when it comes down to things like suicide, sadly, it's 4 times more likely within that industry. So why is that happening, and what can we do about it? That leads to very little accountability for the organization, but fantastic amounts of empowerment for the individuals. And then obviously health and social care. We have a relationship that we've grown over the past 3-4 years within the NHS, and in this area, NHS Humber Foundation Trust, within CAMS, which is Child and Adolescent Mental Health services, within pain logging, which is one we'd never considered, but is actually finding its feet. for people who really live with chronic pain conditions. It's that ability to timestamp and share. And also with, people trying to live, independent lives. Before COVID, we were dealing with social isolation. And obviously in COVID, we're dealing with self-isolation. And there are many, many other areas, drug and alcohol addiction, that we're delighted to be supporting the NHS with. But the others are education. Obviously, 4 years ago, we knew that it was the wrong time to approach, primary schools and secondary schools who we knew were under-resourced, overstretched and stressed out. And the last thing we wanted to do was walk into a school and brandishing a mood beam and say, hey, we've solved your problems, because we knew that there had to be somebody on the end of that data that would actually find it useful and do something about it. So we sort of parked it at that stage, and we're starting to reignite that conversation with schools now, because it's obviously encompassing, what we're dealing with at the moment. But within universities, it's massive. We're working with Hull University, Warwick University, University of Northampton, and it's really to address that moment when somebody who's your young adult child leaves home for the first time, they're suddenly declared an adult, and they have to try and cope and enjoy university life. And what if they're not? There's a huge implication for the university if they walk away from that. But if you are that family or that student, it's lovely for them to know that there is a connection to home, and they can grow up while they still have that connection. So there are many sort of vertical markets appearing all the time, where it's really that whole ability to say, hey, we do a good job within HR, within well-being, within all of these toolkits, with mental health first aiders and all the rest of it. But it's that whole sort of prequel that Moodbeam brings to organizations that is the exciting bit.
No, that's great. Thank you. I think it'd be great if I open the floor to see if anybody else has any questions.
Yeah, Christina, it's Gary here from
Hi, Gary.
Hi, from Miindset, also at C4DI. You talked about pain logging. You talk about time stamping and sharing. How does that work? Is the data shared with someone within an organization? Is that your model? How does it work? What's the benefit of it?
Okay, really good question. So at this stage, obviously, the NHS, we're only really kicking off with in that respect. But with people who have purchased it for themselves as a sort of a non-medical device, if you like, it's been very, very powerful in terms of them being able to sort of log a pain, the intensity of pain. We've even as recently as this week had one lady who was actually gifted one from her employer and actually ended up setting it to pain, no pain, because she'd just gone through back surgery. When I met her last year, she was actually on 2 sticks and sort of, really trying to get back to work, back on it. She'd had enough of being at home. So she actually came back to us this week and she said, I've been using it throughout my recovery, really to sort of log when I had my most discomfort, because you can build it up in your head to be this monster that's always with you. But she said, but actually being able to see that there were yellows there meant that I was coping okay, and being able to share that with her, sort of her doctors and the medics who had gone through the surgery. They find it quite an exciting, novel way of being able to see how somebody is in between sort of appointments to aid recovery. So it's very much a case of it's very, very personal to the user. We deliberately didn't go down the medical device route because we knew that the urgency was there already, and that would add another 2-3 years. We are exploring sort of validation with the university at the moment, but really being able to give it to somebody, or they purchase it off our website and they start to use it within that realm, it's proven very, very useful for quite a few people.
Okay. And in terms of the sort of patterns that you're seeing from usage, is that something you generally look at and analysing yourself, and it's setting out other use cases or setting out potential calls to action for the user, or is it just something that the user sees themselves or their family see themselves and that's it?
Yeah, no, so that's great. So when somebody purchases it for themselves or for somebody else within their family, it's they see the data it's owned by the user. It's up to them whether they ever share that, but it's their personal use case. So they have that information. They can share it. There's the ability to share it sort of via WhatsApp or text or email to somebody that they may want to share it with, whether it's a family member or a physician. When it comes to organizations, we have actually created a dashboard for organizations so that you can see anonymized aggregated data. Now, obviously, we started the conversation within pain, but when it's any sort of data like that, we've worked really, really hard to keep it sort of encrypted. GDPR has made sure that we've done that. And it's really a case of seeing data, but not knowing who is on the end of that is crucial.
Okay, great, thank you.
My pleasure.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, just a quick one from me. Sorry, I think there was somebody else trying to ask a question as well.
That's good. Go ahead, Dania.
Quick question. So this is Christina. Have you considered potentially looking at patterns that you are noticing with the data that is coming in and actually publishing that data as real world evidence of sort?
I think that's something that is, you know, on the pathway, if you like. You know, we know that this data will be very, very valuable to obviously the users or multiple users, if you like. But that's not something that we are ready for right now. It's a case of getting enough aggregated data really to start bringing in AI, machine learning, and that's where you get the richness of the data back. We are in conversations with people all of the time where wouldn't it be amazing to get to that point where, you know, say you have 1 million Moodbeam users and you're able to gauge the, you know, the happiness of the nation. You know, that is an entirely possible thing if you have enough people on there. When, you know, obviously Boris speaks or a change in, you know, return to school happens, it would be a very exciting metric to employ, really, to gauge the mood of the nation.
Brilliant. No, that sounds exciting. It's funny that you mentioned chronic pain because I came across you guys when I was working with Racket Benckiser. So we have
wow.
Bruce Charlesworth in common, actually.
Yes.
And it's actually quite interesting to see the use of this and how this type of technology and how mood and mental health and everything just comes together and how it could impact some of the illnesses and some of the issues that we have with our health as well. So exciting stuff there.
It is, it's massive. And, you know, we had a small trial in the early days with RB, and Bruce has come on as our, we're delighted to have him on our board as our non-exec medical director. And he brings a lot of knowledge, he brings a lot of questions, which is good. We like questions.
He's brilliant.
And I think, you know, we are starting to re-engage with organizations and you know, there is a potential commercial opportunity there really to, you know, within sort of women's health, within male health. It's that whole sort of ability to really offer the consumer a way of logging their pain and what that looks like. And I think this is we're on a really exciting journey with that one, actually. And who knows, that may be one of the biggest opportunities that we have in the end.
No, it sounds amazing. It sounds amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And was there another question?
Yes, Christina, this is Philip Meir. I had two questions. One is, what are your international plans to scale? And secondly, if you team up with other groups that are complementary to what you're offering, whether it's Miindset or anyone else, the fact that you're in the NHS and you've gotten their approval to onboard your service, do you need to reapply if you are adding complementary services to the NHS or not?
No, I think, and I'm happy to take direction on that. That's a big one. I think because we're a standalone brand who chooses very carefully, if you like, who we partner with, we always look for people who have the same principles as us, the same integrity behind and intentions behind the brand. We, would like to think that we can be a standalone brand, that we don't necessarily, the NHS has always worked with us because we have been an exciting supplier, if you like, an exciting opportunity for them to do their job even better. I don't think we need to reclassify ourselves because we're not a medical device, one day maybe, but at the moment we are purely a consumer driven product. To answer your first question, we actually showcased Moodbeam at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas this January. And that was really to gain confidence in the appetite that had already been whetted. We have had people purchasing single devices across the world. We really wanted to see if the appetite was there. We came back with, I think, something in excess of 300-400 leads. And that really showed us that, yes, push on with FCC approval, because obviously we have CE, which is okay for the UK and Europe, but obviously in the US you need FCC compliance. So we're actually in the middle of that at the moment. We have had some large organizations approach us, and I think what's great about Moodbeam is that they're surprised and pleasantly surprised that there are very few barriers because it is a transferable product. There's no language barrier. It's 2 buttons. The technology is the same. English speaking America, it's not an issue. With other organizations that we're sort of in progressive conversations with, they would like to use it within sort of treatment pathways and testing the products as an experiential tool, but in parts of Brazil, but it still works because it's the same product and the same technology doing the same thing. So I think the international interest is there. I think we're on it now because what we've always tended to do is say, look, we've worked really, really hard to create this technology and this solution. And it's sort of the hybrid hardware, software, and obviously the aggregated data with the dashboard as well. That's quite a beast and enough of a task in itself that we would never want to reinvent the wheel. We know that there are existing industries out there with fantastic amounts of expertise in their respective areas, and how we see ourselves is working alongside them, almost like the prequel that latches onto their existing expertise, and that works in every given field, if you like. I think I've answered that.
That is great. Thanks, Christina. Was there any other questions?
No.
Well, I just wanted to say that, I mean, the insights are fascinating, and what you've done so far over the last couple of years, and obviously the reason, the founding reason why you started is an inspirational story in itself. So we're delighted that you were one of those people that decided that you wanted to solve that problem and actually change people's lives, because I can see that it's got a huge benefit to many, many different types of people. And I just, like you've said here, mood visualization changes mental health perspectives. And the story that you shared about the lady suffering with pain is a great example of how you're actually making a difference to each person. So thank you very much for sharing with us today the mindset and obviously about wearable technology. And we're delighted to have you as part of the ecosystem and technology that we're all working with.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. I know Jonathan, I think he's on the call as well somewhere. We are very, very proud of the partnerships that we're, building with yourselves, people in it for the right reasons, really carving a way sort of with a new technology, and really ultimately none of this is of any use if it's not useful to the person. And I think that's what, collaboration brings every time, is that what you don't have, somebody else has, and together it's a really powerful thing. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And thank you very much for everybody who attended. And this is part of a regular reoccurring series with different themes each time. So feel free to visit the LinkedIn pages or our website to find out about forthcoming webinars coming. So thank you all and have a wonderful day.